Hello, everybody. Welcome to our physics panel, physics alumni panel. I realize today is the last presidential debate, but it's already too late for me to change it to a later date. So I promise you, we're not going to be fighting for our airtime here. And I'm not going to be using the mute on and off switch to control the flow. So we'll have a peaceful conversation, casual conversation with our panelists. So to save time, we started a little bit late today. So to save time, I'm not gonna go through the detailed bios of our panelists. I'm not gonna read that line by line. So what I'm gonna do is, out of the due respect to our panelists and also to set up the tone for our later discussion and conversation, I just give you guys a brief introduction of our panelists. So let's start with Susan. Susan Battetti is in addition to his physics degree, BS degree here at Furman in physics, he attended Tufts University and got a master's degree in mechanical engineering. After that, he started his career. He is currently working at biotech and the pharmaceutical company in quality control, quality insurance. And she is also a president of the Furman Alumni Club at Boston area. And Emily, after her study at Furman and BS in physics degree, Emily went to Vanderbilt University to study medical physics, which is a prestigious program, nationally renowned program, medical physics program at Vanderbilt. After that, Emily worked at the West Physics as West Physics Consulting, and she is currently the field director at Nashville for West Physics Consulting. And Catherine Mittauer, Dr. Mittauer, went all the way to PhD. So she, after Furman, got his BS degree at Furman. She went to Kentucky University to get the master in medical physics, actually radiation medical physics, and then moved to Florida, moved back to Florida to get a PhD in medical physics, and did residency and a fellowship in radiation therapy from University of Wisconsin. So you have been around in many schools around the nation, and she is currently board certified medical physicist at Miami Cancer Institute and assistant professor at University International University. Oh, by the way, Emily Chastain is also a board certified medical physicist, if I'm getting that right. Okay, what I wanna, let's get started with this question. Everybody will talk about this question in a career panel. This one is about your career pathway, how you pick, what do you pick, or how you end up what you're doing right now. Let's start. As your teacher and research supervisor, I'm very, very proud what you have achieved. I want to say that to you guys. So I'm really proud. I think I know a great deal about your life and work here at Furman. Because I'm the teacher and the supervisor, but I don't know too much about your career pathways after Furman, how you end up what you're doing right now. So we want to talk a little bit about that. So let's start with, so let me make the question more clear here. Let's see, what guided you in your decision making that led you to your current career? And what kind of thing that you took into consideration while you make your decision. So let's start with, I think we're supposed to start with Emily, right?
Right. So I really can't attribute it to just one thing. There's a lot of different influences going on at the same time. So when I started at Furman, my intention was to complete the dual degree engineering program. I'm not sure if that still exists, but the intent was to do 3 years at Furman, 2 years at an engineering school. And at the time, I thought, while I was an undergrad, I thought that was going to be my path, some sort of engineering. And then I was leaning towards biomedical. And yeah, so 2-3 is still there. And I kind of just was having a hard time leaving Furman. So I was trying to think of a new career path. And so I started just researching a ton, reaching out to other alums. I ended up talking to another medical physicist who was a Furman alum. And also I did some research with Dr. Wang, and we did laser speckle imaging. And even though I'd kind of found out research probably wasn't my long career goal, I really enjoyed working with imaging. So I looked more into that. And then I found this career of diagnostic medical physics. So it was the intersection of medicine and also physics and other different interests that I thought was really appealing. And so that's how I found my career. And then did you also want to know how it kind of went further than that, or is that sufficient?
Yes, I want you to go beyond just the Furman, and
Okay.
if you could also include a little bit of your later career pathway, that would be great.
Right. Yeah. So then I started. So then I was applied to schools. I got accepted at Vanderbilt, and then I even focused more on diagnostic physics, and I gained a lot of clinical experience. And then at the time, I was the last graduating class who could go straight to a job or complete a residency, and I chose to do a residency. And at the time, it was extremely competitive, but I was fortunate enough to gain a residency at West Physics, which is a national consulting firm. And we have a huge variety of clients. It seemed to be a really good fit for me. I got a ton of different experiences, and I've been there pretty much ever since. So in that experience, it's an Atlanta-based headquarters. I started out in Atlanta, and then I was sent to New Mexico. I worked at a major university there. I also worked for a university in Philadelphia, and anything in between, from a very basic imaging center to, country hospitals. So it's been just a varied experience. I do all imaging modalities. I also bring expertise in health physics, and I serve as a radiation safety officer for some facilities.
Thank you. That's wonderful. I think Kate, you're the next one.
Yes. Thanks everyone for the opportunity to talk with you guys today. Thanks to all the participants for coming and listening to careers in physics. My pathway in deciding to go into medical physics during my undergrad at Furman, I took the pre-med track. I completed the pre-med track, was planning to go to medical school. I don't know how many candidates are on the line that I'm sure there's a couple that are in the same situation that are planning to go to medical school and then not sure if that's quite the right fit for them. So my mother actually had Googled physics jobs in medicine and found medical physics and came to me and said, how about this? And actually Furman has a great track record with medical physics. Greenville Hospital System when the time I was there, and I know I see the physicists at national meetings, they're very open to allowing undergraduates to come observe medical physics. So if you think that this might be a fit for you, absolutely you have opportunities to go observe there in Greenville. I know with COVID, it might be a little bit more challenging, but just want to throw that out there for everyone. So for me, I was in this position. I met Dr. Baker and he said, why don't you consider majoring in physics? I loved physics. I was struggling with my other science coursework for memorization, struggled in organic chemistry, some of the upper level biology courses, and I found myself more inclined to physics and my math classes. So I went ahead and pursued my degree in physics, completed the pre-med course, and then went on for a master's in medical physics. My first goal in my career after coming out of Furman was to have a clinical career, which as Emily said, that's a master's or it can be a PhD as well. with a residency component. Residency is now mandatory. At that time, for both Emily and myself, it was not mandatory. But you get lots of on-the-job clinical training experience. So I went on, did a master's, and then I decided I wanted to go ahead and pursue a PhD. I, at that time, wanted to do clinical research as well as work clinically. And when I say work clinically, essentially as medical physicists, as Emily described, we're working with imaging modalities. We're working in the hospital system. So for me, I'm a radiation therapy. I am a therapy medical physicist. So I'm working in radiation oncology. We essentially are the scientists and the brains behind how we're going to treat patients. The energy of the photon, are we going to use photon? Are we going to use protons? Are we going to use electrons? So what the radiation type is, and then, you know, the energy, how deep in the patient do we need to deposit that radiation dose? So we are the brains behind that aspect, as well as, you know, the high precision on how we set up patients, immobilization, imaging, etc. So we are really, it's very unique. We work obviously hand in hand with our radiation oncologist, but we are the more science component of it. And just as a plug, we are, as Emily and I are board certified physicists, we are one of two non-medical professions, non-MD professions that are under the ABMS. So we will have this job stability all throughout medical physics. Will keep and control that, because we are working with radiation, and the quality control and safety components is essential. So just giving a plug from as far as a career stability, it is absolutely a very stable career. So went in, did my PhD. I went on to a residency, 2-year residency, and then a fellowship. I specialize in MR guided radiation therapy. And I do clinic and research. And for me, it's so much fun to do research. You know, developing new modalities is where it's at. So if I could do more research, I would, but unfortunately I don't get paid to do that. I get paid to do more of the clinic. So that's kind of my career path. And I will move it on to Susan.
Great. Hey everyone, I'm Susan. Wow, impressive. Those are tough acts to follow, you guys. Thank you all for having me here. First off, I kudos to the students. I was not as proactive as I should have been in exploring careers when I was at your stage of the game. My career path has been, I think, a lot more trial and error. So I'm just going to be totally frank, because I think it's important to know that you don't have to have it all figured out. And frankly, I'm not even going to say that I still have it figured out, but I'm getting closer. When I was a physics major, I chose the major not even really knowing what path I wanted to take, and just thought the subject that I like, I'm good at math, but I want to have a more applied route, so I'll go physics. I did a physics internship in a metamaterials lab at Boston College, which fulfilled my dream as a big Boston College hockey fan to one day work briefly in a Boston College lab. And I was like, wow, this is really cool, but it's not clicking me sitting here in a lab running computer simulations, and I'm not exactly sure where else to go with this. So after graduation, I really cast a really wide net of different kinds of jobs to apply to, everything from different kinds of research outside of metamaterials to physics teacher positions in the Boston area. I even briefly thought about medical physics. And to be honest, it was the first job that called me back that I took. At that point, I was just kind of sick of being at my parents' house after 2 months back from college, and thought, okay, this is my foot in the door, and we'll see where we go from there. And that job was a clinical research position at an ophthalmology company. So whenever a new drug manufacturer of a dry eye or allergy product wants to test their new drug and get FDA approval and all that, they use our company as sort of the testers for them. And so I thought, you know, ophthalmology, I really love the optics part of physics. That was some of my favorite material that we covered. So maybe that content matter will come in handy. And the more I was there, I realized that I wasn't really using the optics piece. And I loved working with the patients. as part of the clinical part of my job. However, there is this research and development group of my company, and they were always playing with new gadgets and looked like they were developing new computer programs. And one day I just said, hey, what do you guys do exactly? And how did you get here? And they were all mechanical engineers. So I went back to school for mechanical engineering at Tufts. And I was one of the, there was a handful of physics majors too in the mechanical engineering program. There were also a lot of folks that came directly from mechanical engineering undergrad. And I kind of went in there thinking I would go into more of a product development position. And then the lab that I got a research grant at was the lab for engineering education and outreach. So that lab was really focused on how do we teach towards engineering, both for young students and for high school teachers who are now being asked to bring engineering into their classrooms, more and more common than ever before. So we worked a lot with Lego Education, ran focus groups with different kinds of educational products. And that's where I found this new love of education and STEM. So then going back out into the working world, I still wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do, but had a better idea that I want to bring education into the mix. And Boston is a huge hub for biotech. And when I was in college, I did not know much about the biotech world at all, but in Boston, you're kind of surrounded by it, especially during COVID. I'm sure, as all of you know, it's really at the forefront of research and news. So I found a job in quality assurance training, which means that I work a lot with the clinical researchers, the manufacturers, those who are doing kind of more of the technical work of the drug development. And I help them with their technical writing, process improvement, which is some of my favorite part. It takes me back to the lab at Furman when I would be in the fishbowl, just like going at a problem and brainstorming and problem mapping things out with people. And it took me a while to get there, but it eventually all kind of wove together. And so I've been in biotech for 2 years now.
Wonderful. So that's a very interesting pathway that you described, Susan, that you picked the mechanical engineering because of the need from the workplace. There is an interest, or there is a connection there, and you went back and studied mechanical engineering at the at the master level. I mean, for many people, I think it's they think it's going to be all streamlined one way, but they don't think this kind of going back and forth, right? You know, you can have many different. I mean, life makes many turns in that. Mm-hmm. So this next question is for our medical physicists, Kate and Emily. So we have many students here are on the pre-med track, pre-health track, and they graduate with a degree that is not really in physics. They may graduate with maybe an English degree, but they done their pre-health and pre-med track work. So is it possible for them to pursue a career in medical physics? And if yes, what do they need to have? What do they need to? How do they prepare?
I'll start. So I would definitely say it's possible. You really need to get your ducks in a row. There's lots of prerequisites, and they're going to vary depending on the program. So you're going to have to really go into detail to see if you'll be prepared as your schedule stands right now. And it's just going to vary a little bit program to program. So I can't say definitively. But I can direct you to any CAMPEP accreditation site. It has links to all of those programs where you can find that information and compare it to your schedule.
What about Vanderbilt, the one that you attended? Is that one pretty demanding, the prerequisite requirement, pretty demanding?
So one course that I had to fit into my schedule that I would have never taken was the Intro to Computer Science. And that was required. They strongly recommended anatomy and physiology. And that was, if you're pre-med, I suppose you've already had that.
Yeah.
But I would not have unless I was, already preparing myself.
Did they require a whole array of undergraduate physics courses at Vanderbilt, or it's just a few core courses?
Well, I don't have the current requirements in front of me, unfortunately.
But back to your time when you attended.
But when I attended, they did require a high up into the advanced physics courses and high up into the math courses.
Okay, that's beyond the introductory level then.
Right, definitely beyond intro.
300 level at our school. Yeah, thank you. Okay, you want to add anything?
So I think other than the Camp App website where you can look at individual programs and see what their curriculum requirements are for applying, I would also recommend going to the ABR website. And you have to have a certain amount of these core classes, irrespective of going into a master's. You have to have those as far as prerequisite for sitting for your boards in order to take part 1 of your ABR boards. So I think that is essential to be able to have those. And most of the Camp App programs have adopted that list. From my memory, I remember like E&M was on there, differential equations, etc. So yes, you can do this alternate pathway where you don't have a physics degree. It's going to take a year of doing the coursework. You know, having a pre-med coursework already done is going to be, that's perfect because the pre-med coursework is needed for medical physics. You'll just need to do some of those, as Emily said, the upper level physics courses. It looks like Rebecca also posted a link to the Camp App website.
Okay, thank you for that info. I remember you contact me while you were in Kentucky University. The professor there asked for proof of your coursework in experimental physics. Is that, I remember it wrong or not?
Yeah.
From Kentucky University.
Right. Yeah, I think I had to get like the course syllabus, and I think that's what we ended up sending to Dr. Malloy over at University of Kentucky. Yeah, I do remember that. I do remember that. You know, that's interesting. You know, some of them require unique things like computer science or experimental physics. But having that, both of those courses, I highly recommend as I've gone in my career. I wish I had more computer science time when I was during my undergrad or even my graduate work.
Thank you. I think what my impression is, I agree with you guys, what you just said, that this varies from institution to institution. Really, it's not like a national standard or something like that. But my impression is most of the school or institute requires enough physics that is equivalent to a minor, to a physics minor. I think that's the kind of bar that on average, that's what I remember. Okay, move on to the next question.
Hey, Dr. Wang, can I interrupt really quick?
Go ahead.
We have a chat question about if you get a MS, like a general physics MS degree, could you pursue medical physics after that? That's another question.
Absolutely.
You know, so.
They're starting to do, so if you have a master's in physics and switch to medical physics, there are programs where you can actually bypass your master's in medical physics and do what's called a certificate program. So many of these, for example, University of Florida has one. Many of these programs have an accelerated, I don't remember if it's a year and a half of coursework that you do that's medical physics related. But it's for candidates that already have a graduate degree in some related field like physics that can do certificate programs. So it actually can accelerate you.
Thanks. Next one, I think one of our audience also asked this question. It's about this kind of skill set, the ability, the competencies that you find that are essential in order to perform well and be effective in your current position. and how are those related to your training in physics in general? I will start with Emily again.
Sure. So I would say actually the most important skill set for me is to listen and give information that's needed for that particular client. So a lot of what I do is problem solving for medical institutions, but it's not recreating anything. It's kind of creatively problem solving. Okay, this is the literature that's out there. Here's how it's going to fit well for your program, and these radiation safety practices will work, and this type of system for either tracking your doses is something that's very important in imaging physics. So those types of systems and figuring out how they apply and having that broader picture. And I think my experience at Furman Physics was especially helpful to kind of put all the pieces of the puzzle together. And that's helped me be very effective in my career.
Kate?
So yeah, I agree. The person-to-person communication, I think, for as much as, you know, we're all, at the end of the day, we're all physicists. And this is something that we might not have as the most natural ability in ourselves. And it is definitely an important part of my job as well, is these communications. So being able to take a physics, when one of my physicians is asking for feedback about whether it's radiation safety or something specific to that patient, is having to shorten and condense what's in my head about all of the nuances in that the physics components could be affected, and answer that to them in a 15-30 second response. So that is sometimes one of the most challenging things, as well as, you know, it's a very much a team environment. There's many people, many different personalities in this team, hospital, academic environment, even the academic environment. So figuring out how to balance and, you know, in working with that. And I think Furman definitely did excellent. It was the Furman physics department was a very hands-on team approach. So I worked with my colleagues and my students together all the time on homework. You know, that's what the fishbowl kind of creates, is that atmosphere. And I think that was excellent for me to have that experience in undergrad, and then be able to develop those skills. Public speaking is also another one. I took the public speaking class at Furman. That is definitely helped, again, being able to talk about advanced subjects and being able to tell other people who are not physicists nuances of what we're doing.
Thank you, Kate. Yes, we enjoy your public speech a lot while you're at Furman, including that inauguration of our new science building. So
right.
you're shining again tonight. So I really need to learn a thing or two from you. I guess we can keep contact, and I can take courses from you. Susan, you wanna?
Yeah, absolutely. Not to be unoriginal at this point, but just to drive communication home, I mean, that is one of the biggest pieces of what I do. And especially for a role in training where I'm trying to help onboard new folks in manufacturing or clinical, trying to extract all of this information from the subject matter experts and then being able to boil it down in layman's terms so that someone new can quickly ramp up and do their job without feeling overwhelmed. And I think for me, physics really helped prepare me for that. And personally, I don't know about you guys, I felt overwhelmed a lot when I was, especially in electromagnetism and classical mechanics, not to call it anything out. And I loved how it challenged me and how it forced me to break down problems into smaller pieces to teach it to myself. And I apply that into the work that I do now with training, and it makes the content that I'm getting now for my job seem a lot less intimidating after having gone through that at Furman. And I would also say that flexibility for a lot of roles, especially if you're looking to be in a tech job or biotech, both of those worlds. And I can't speak to medical physics, but I'm sure that they're evolving quickly as well, as is every industry right now. But you know, my role, I've only been in alumni this company for 2 years, and my role's changed 3 or 4 times. So just being able to realize that there's going to be some times you feel unsure and don't know as these things change, but having confidence that, you know, if you can graduate with a degree in physics, then you are a good problem solver, and have faith to just kind of push through it and know when you need to ask questions or raise a hand.
Thank you. I think I have a question coming in from our audience. So he's asking about what kind of computer program language are the most beneficial to learn as an undergrad these days. So you guys talk a lot about the computer thing, the programming related work and background. So Emily, you want to say something?
So I was required to take that course, but I never do that in my career. I never program anything. Having a general understanding of some things is helpful, but honestly, right now, the only programming I do is just like macros Excel. So it's not full on programming whatsoever.
Kate, do you do any programming or use any kind of
Sure.
language?
So I use MATLAB, and I would say I use it for research, but I also use it for clinical, developing just easy workflows to enable me to do other things easier in our day-to-day medical physics life. So MATLAB, I took a course in C, but I'm mostly using really MATLAB. MATLAB's pretty user-friendly.
I agree. Yeah.
No, I agree with MATLAB. I would also say that what I saw in engineering schools, that almost everyone took an intro to Python course, or even just took a few, you know, Code Academy kind of courses, and that is an easier gateway language that can then teach you kind of the basic logic and structure that can apply to other computer languages. So I think that's a good way to get your feet wet.
You can just want to comment on MATLAB. You can Google, and anytime I'm like, how do I do which command should I use? If you Google, there's tons of like YouTube videos, and someone has also asked the same question. So there's a good community for MATLAB.
Yeah, great point. I believe MATLAB has the largest user community in all science and engineering programming languages. Python and Java, these are more generic, so they cover more. If you're just talking about science community or engineering community, I try to force our majors to do MATLAB more, but they are dead fans of Mathematica. You guys know that, right? Mathematica. They want to derive equations, so they're very loyal fans of Mathematica. But anyhow, so the next one, I guess this is also pretty important, especially in the context of this socio-economical situation we're having now. So I know you guys are not working in HR department and you're not directly in charge of hiring, but you have all gone through this process, maybe multiple times of interviews and apply and interview and then negotiate, get the deal done. So what are the things or, you know, features or strengths and merits that a candidate needs to show the future employer to get hired in your kind of working environment? Emily, you want to get started?
Sure. Yeah, I have participated in other interviews for our new hires as well. So we hire a lot of recent graduates, so we usually don't have an expectation that you would know everything. Of course not. But we do have an expectation that you do have experiences where you have learned something. And I think it's really important to demonstrate your ability to adapt and learn. If you can think of any story and any experience that you have done, you want to come in prepared with that. Another thing I'm always really impressed with is if somebody has done their homework, they know a lot about the company. You know, there's tons of information. You should research as much public information you can if you are to that level in your job application where you're actually interviewing. So you shouldn't be asking, you know, questions that were, you know, it might be available on that company's website. To just really know, and to, if you can show any excitement that you want to be a part of that team and that you already kind of know as much as you can about that team.
Thanks. I mean, you mentioned this very important thing that almost most of people mention this adaptability. That has to be, people has to be flexible. Susan just mentioned that as well in your job, in relation to your job responsibilities. So you have to be adaptable and to the changing environment, because you don't know what's going to be the next day's job going to be. But my question here, I think, is how do job candidates prepare to show people that he or she is adaptable? Well, I mean, I couldn't write this word on my head and say I'm adaptable, right? So how do you capture that trait from interviewer?
So I think the number one way is just if you have a story about yourself in a situation where you were adaptable, maybe something, maybe a bad experience in your life and how you overcame it. Maybe you can talk about how tough Fermi physics is and how you've made that work. You know, your most difficult class, if you're just starting out, or, you know, just bring in all of your adversities and what creative way you thought of to overcome that.
Thank you. That's a great point there. Yeah. Kate, you are probably interviewing students for your as your research assistant. So you are now the, you know, the.
Well, no, I'll take as many as I can get.
Okay, great. Lucky for them.
No, it's a good question. It's, you know, it's a really good question. And I think it's a question that's applicable to, I think, everyone who's on the call. And you know, I think taking an interview experience is not, you know, not just you showcasing your talents and why you're a fit for the institution, but I think that you should flip it on the institution and say, well, why are they a fit for me? And so I think that if you have that, you know, keep that in the back of your mind, you're naturally going to have, you know, more engaging questions. And I think it's important to showcase, you know, your unique talents, you know, when you are interviewing. And when I'm looking at candidates, I want to look at someone who I want to work every day with. You know, I want to see somebody who's engaging, who's interested, who's going to be able, when, you know, the midnight oil hits and, you know, everyone's exhausted, are they going to be able to power through? You know, that's the kind of team that, you know, we need sometimes when it's, you know, a very challenging either clinical situation or research situation. So yes, we want the best and brightest and smartest, but it's when especially in this stage with undergrad to, you know, moving on to graduate school or first job out, I think that employers are going to be wondering how many of those tough times, as Emily mentioned, that you've hit. And I do want to know that you have hit a tough time and that you can persevere. So really perseverance, engagement, enthusiasm, work ethic are really the big players, and being able to communicate clearly is what I want to see in an applicant.
Thank you, Kate.
Yeah, well said. I mean, everything that they just said times 10. I would also say that emphasizing that point about being able to tell your narrative. I know that for a lot of students who maybe have had an internship or two, some of you maybe haven't had one yet, that maybe your narrative doesn't feel as long, but you can keep building up on every experience you get at Furman, every extracurricular or, you know, class you take outside of your comfort zone. That's an opportunity to kind of build your story and why you have the interest that you do. And for me, having switched careers sort of 3 times in a few years, I definitely had to tell that story in my interview, so I didn't just seem like someone who was flaky and couldn't make up their mind. I had a reason why I was looking at that company. whether it is because of the people, the mission behind it. The company I'm at right now, they do rare genetic disease research. And given all the biotech companies in Boston, I'd be able to tell them why that one out of the 1,000 that are there. So I also spent a lot of time combing their website and better understanding their patient stories. I would also say that, you know, there's going to be a lot of smart applicants out there, and beyond just having, you know, I took these classes, I know these computer languages or software, being able to show your willingness to learn. Because again, going back to that adaptability, showing that, you know, you won't know everything going into a job, and they don't expect you to. They're going to train you additional things that you need to know. So being able to show that you're willing to learn and eager to learn.
Thank you, Susan. Next one is about time travel. Let's imagine that you travel back in time to your college lifetime, your time at Furman 10 years, 9 years ago. Knowing what you know now with your current experience, what advice would you give to your freshman self or maybe sophomore self? I mean, your college copy, so that you can get better prepared and be more successful and avoid unnecessary troubles that you experienced down the way. Emily, you are the first.
Okay. So I would probably encourage myself to, and actually I got this same advice, so I don't know if I would listen to myself either back then, but just to say yes, unless there's a really good reason to say no. Like if you're invited, say yes. It's the time where you can, you know, experience new things, find out more about yourself. And I think I did that to some extent, but there's probably even more I could have known.
Thank you. Kate.
I think that undergrad for many folks, including myself, is a lot of many highs and many lows. And it's, you know, the first time that we're not living in with our family, and, you know, we're out figuring out what we want to do with our career, for our career. And there's a lot of pressure in your undergraduate, especially being a pre-med background where you want to go into medical school or have thoughts on going into a PhD or graduate school. And there's a lot of pressure. And I think just taking a breath and knowing that when the lows do hit, when you hit something hard, whether it's a really hard class that you're in, whether it's, you know, you didn't do too good on a test, that it's okay. And this is actually part of the process. It's part of you developing and coping mechanisms and improving and learning how to critically think, and, you know, and learning how to study. We're still, to this day, I have to take an online quiz once a week for my profession. So it never, unfortunately, it never ends. This is for our board. So yeah, it's highs. There's a lot of highs and there's a lot of lows, and just you can get really, you know, you can get sucked into the lows, and you just got to keep persevering. And that's really my what I would tell my younger self.
Yeah, no, those are great, and I would echo both of those, and also say that, yeah, those are some of the best years of your life. And right now, you know, my best friends that I keep in touch with the most, even being in Boston, and most of my friends are still down south from Furman, and they are some of the best people that I've met. So I would just say, really take that time to appreciate where you are. I remember feeling kind of a panic during my last semester of senior year, saying, wait, I have to leave this? What? Why? It's great. I would also say that I waited to kind of explore what kind of career options were out there. I don't think I asked enough questions or took advantage of the networking opportunities that were there. And it doesn't have to be always formal webinars or conferences or going on LinkedIn. It can be as small as, you know, family, friends, reaching out to them and asking about the kind of work that they do, because frankly, there are so many kinds of jobs out there, and the world is evolving, that, you know, there will be new jobs, a new cycle of jobs in the next year and the year after. So just constantly asking questions and putting feelers out there.
Thank you. This next question is a little bit unrelated to our main topic. So maybe I'll just answer this question on behalf of our panelists, unless you guys want to add anything. So I have a question asking about what are the areas in physics, what are the careers in physics that blend with areas in philosophy, like metaphysics? I think metaphysics is not the same as medical physics. There's a big difference. Of course, this is a branch in philosophy. So I guess you can be you can do theory in string theory. You can be a pure theoretical physics to do string theory, which at this point has no way of. I mean, it cannot be proved to be false by experiment or observation at this moment or in any near future. So without fallacy, proof, or validation, this string theory kind of trend towards metaphysics and philosophy rather than experimental science like physics. So if you're thinking about a blending of these two areas, you could try string theory. But a word of caution here, though, is that you cannot write your way out of string theory. You have to derive your way out of the string theory. It's all mathematically based. It's heavy, very heavy in math. Unlike many of the areas in philosophy and metaphysics, those are all word-based. So the meaning over there is pretty much semantic meaning, okay, in those traditional areas of philosophy. But the string theory is all about math. So the language there are in symbols, in math symbols. So be careful what you want to do, what you wish. Okay, okay, I got Baker saying string theory is not a good path now. Mathematics. Okay, maybe our Dr. Baker can advise this student about the area that can blend both philosophy and physics, and you know. So our time is almost up. I want to see if any audience on the background have anything to ask our panelists while they're still here.
Dr. Wang, sorry, could I jump in real quick on the metaphysics? As someone that was not a philosophy major, I realize that I can't speak super well to this question. This is just kind of my gut speaking, but you know, there are positions in, at least in the world that I'm in biotech, that deal with ethics. And I know that, you know, with all of the research going on right now on genetics, there's a lot of kind of bigger questions as to where are the boundaries that we have. And I think that that's something where someone with more of a philosophy background, but also having a technical background, could be a really good candidate.
Do they need to know a lot about the regulations, laws, you know, those legal systems, if they are to work around those tough spots and tough issues?
Yeah, and as someone that's not super in the philosophy and law world, it's fairly unfamiliar to me, but I imagine it would be a lot of familiarizing yourself with the regulations and that too.
There's a question popped up here. It's asked about what does a day in the life of a medical physicist look like? Describe your life, your workday, regular workday. Amy, you wanna?
Sure. So I would say the bread and butter of a diagnostic medical physicist is testing imaging modalities to make sure they meet certain standards. I do things beyond that, but well, we'll take this week, for example. I did an audit on Monday, a mammography survey, and then 2 MRI surveys today. So basically there are certain standards that the imaging modalities have to meet in order for the facility to be accredited. And the medical physicist is a big component of ensuring that is happening. So I'm basically imaging plastic, and it should turn out like I expect it to. And I do all those measurements, and that's really the bread and butter.
Okay, so here's one more question here. Can diagnostic medical physics work with mammograms and ultrasound or sonograph?
Yep, all the time.
All the time, yes, you heard that, all the time. That's their mainstay, one of the, yeah. So I think our time is here. We unfortunately couldn't extend this beyond 8 o'clock. That's our legal limit, I guess. Rebecca, you correct me if I got wrong. So I'd like to thank all our panelists once again. Thank you for getting online in our already Zoom fatigued society. I really appreciate that you could give us the opportunity to talk to you guys, especially after this many years we haven't haven't seen each other. By the way, tomorrow is our homecoming day here at Furman. So if you guys are still fresh and want to get us some more Zoom going on, you can register for tomorrow's homecoming weekend. I mean homecoming Friday. Okay, but I really, as I said, proud of what you have achieved, and if you can continue to keep in contact with us and helping our students here who are into this track or related areas, that will be. We will be really appreciate. We were grateful, really grateful for what you are doing here. Okay. So yes, they are all on LinkedIn, right? You all have LinkedIn websites. So we could send your LinkedIn information to our audience if they want further information and contact you guys. So Rebecca, I think we need to cut this off. Yes, Rebecca?
Yes. Yeah, no, it was great. Thank you so much. I just sent a little note in the chat for you students who attended. You'll get an email survey tomorrow about the program. And we'll be sure, yeah, to send contact information out so you can reach out to panelists if you have additional questions. But this was great. Thank you so much for your time, everybody.